Welcome in, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. We will get started shortly as we see more participants join. Thank you for joining on this beautiful Monday afternoon. We are so excited to have everybody here. Today, we have some really great training for you. We are actually starting or launching our part one of our class environment series. And this part will focus on how spaces, materials, and displays shape children's daily experiences and the quality of adult-child interactions. We'll use the class environment tool alongside the class framework. The environment, as we know, sets the stage and interactions bring learning to life. The environment really does set the stage for interactions. When spaces, materials, and displays are intentional, we know that they support emotional safety, organization, and instructional depth. The class environment tool is designed to help us look closely at the spaces, materials, and displays that shape children's experiences. Once again, thank you for joining us. This is part one of a two-part series. Our next part will take place February 19th at the same time from 3 to 5. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and I am going to pass it to our division director, Stephen Profiter.
Wonderful. Thank you, Yvette. And good afternoon and welcome, everyone. I'm Stephen Profiter, the Director of the Early Education Division here at the California Department of Education. I have the privilege of working with the amazing people you see on this webinar and many you may see in other spaces. We appreciate that you've taken some time here, time away from your day to be with us and participate in this class environment training. We truly appreciate your commitment to this. We know that attending webinars like this means stepping away from many other responsibilities that you have, and we don't take that lightly. Your willingness to engage in this process speaks volumes about your dedication to quality for children and families that we serve. It's been exciting to see the progress that we've made together with class across the state. What really started as something new and unfamiliar to some is becoming part of our shared language around quality, and we think that's a big accomplishment. We also want to acknowledge that this has been a lift. Implementing class while balancing staffing, program requirements, and daily operations isn't easy. But the effort that you've put in to make this work is real, and we've noticed it. Today's webinar is about strengthening our understanding of the class environment and how it connects to the work that you're already doing in classrooms every day. We hope this feels useful. We hope it feels practical, and we hope it's supportive of your teams. Again, thank you for your partnership and for your perseverance. We are excited to continue this work with you and to keep building on the strong foundation we've created together. I'll hand it over to our colleagues, one of our colleagues from the El Dorado County Office of Education, Laura. And I'll just hand it all over to you, Laura.
Thank you, Stephen. Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here and spend the afternoon with you all. We're going to start with going over our agenda for today. So here's an overview of what we'll cover today. We're going to start with an opening reflection to ground ourselves in the importance of learning environments. Next, we'll review the elements of the class framework and how the class environment tool complements it. We'll dive into the three key domains of emotional support, classroom organization, and instructional support, and exploring how each connects to the physical environment. After that, we're going to have an opportunity to reflect and discuss our continuous quality improvement, focusing on those actionable steps educators can take to enhance their learning spaces. And finally, we'll wrap up with resources and contact information so you can continue the learning and applying these strategies. I'd also like to invite you to use the class environment workbook. This is a fillable document, so please feel free to add your notes, ideas, and follow-up reflections as you go. Jade will share the link to the workbook in the chat for you to access and use today and as you leave this webinar. and for our second session as well. Next slide. Thank you, Jade, for dropping the workbook. Okay, we're going to start with a quick reflection. So I'd like for you to, let's begin by pausing and reflecting on your own experiences. I want to invite you to think of a space where you felt completely comfortable and inspired to learn or create. What made that space feel that way for you? Feel free to share one word in the chat to describe that space so that all our colleagues can hear those words and see those words. But also feel free to add to your workbook, and we're working off of page 2 in your class environment workbook. So we'll take a minute to just reflect on that space. So as you continue to reflect on that environment, just want us to think about the environments that often the environments that stand out to us have qualities that support comfort, curiosity, and connection. So as we move through today's training, keep that environment in mind, because the same elements that supported you can be intentionally brought into early learning spaces to support young children. I see the chat has a lot of movement. So thank you for your contribution. Okay, next slide, Johanna. All right, let's dive right into the elements of class and class environment. So class environment focuses on the setting items that support interactions, while we know the class tool itself focuses on the interactions between educators and children. When we bring these two components together, we create a powerful system that influences children's learning and engagement. The environment sets the stage and creates opportunities, and interactions are what bring those opportunities to life. So throughout our training today, we'll explore how these two frameworks work in partnership to create classrooms where every child can thrive. Next slide. Classroom interactions are described by the class tool, are at the heart of children's learning and development. By focusing on the materials, displays, and arrangement that most directly influence teaching and learning, class environment can support educators in designing early learning settings to better support meaningful interactions. So throughout today's training, we'll use these symbols that you see here on the screen to show which class environment item aligns with each class domain. So for example, if we're looking at our visual here, the heart symbol, which is under emotional support, and the chair symbol, which is under arrangements, this item is supporting that emotional support in the classroom. So you'll find these symbols throughout the entire presentation so that you can start to make those connections on how the class environment and the class tool and interactions are working together. Okay, next slide. So as we know, the class framework is organized into 3 domains. We have emotional support, classroom organization, and instructional support. So let's start with emotional support. This domain focuses on how educators build warm, positive, and trusting relationships with children It's all about creating a sense of belonging where children feel safe, valued, and understood. And as we know, when children experience those strong emotional supports, they're more likely to take risk in their learning and engage deeply in the classroom community. And we have our symbol of the heart that helps support that emotional support in the classroom. Next, we have classroom organization, and this domain looks at how educators manage children's behavior, time, and attention so that learning can happen smoothly. So it's not about control, it's about creating an environment that helps children stay focused, interested, and productive. You'll see elements like clear expectations, effective routines, and smooth transitions reflected here. And as you can all see, we have our symbol of our gears. And finally, we have instructional support. So this domain focuses on how educators help children think, reason, and communicate more deeply. It's about going beyond basic knowledge, asking open-ended questions, encouraging problem solving, and supporting language development. Instructional support helps children connect ideas and develop critical thinking skills that extend beyond the classroom. So together, these three domains give us a full picture of what those high quality interactions look like: emotionally supportive, well organized, and engaging. Okay, let's dive right into our first domain of emotional support. Next slide. So as I shared with you briefly in our previous slide, emotional support is all about creating a classroom where children feel safe and valued and connected. When we talk about emotional support in relation to the environment, we're thinking about how the physical space contributes to children's sense of belonging and comfort. For example, we can think of cozy spaces that encourage that closeness, accessible materials that promote independence, and displays that celebrate children's identities all help build a warm and responsive climate. So as we explore the environment items within this domain, think about how even small changes like furniture is placed or what is displayed at children's eye level can significantly elevate that emotional connection. Okay, next slide. So within the emotional support domain, we begin with arrangements category. These items help us look closely at how the physical layout of the classroom supports children's relationships, their regulation, and their social emotional development. So as we walk through each one of the items, consider how the arrangement of the environment can either invite those warm interactions or unintentionally create those barriers. Next slide. All right, so we have item 1, space for cooperation. This item focuses on how the classroom layout supports children and educators in working and playing together. When we think of a well-organized space, it allows children to cooperate in close proximity with educators and peers. There's ample room for movement so that children can engage comfortably or not feel restricted with the space. The arrangement also makes it easy for educators. Oh, go back. Yeah. The arrangement also makes it easy for educators to be physically close to children, sitting beside them at a table, joining them on the floor, or moving easily between activities. This closeness helps build that those warm, responsive interactions. So finally, thoughtful room setup ensures that children can play and explore without interrupting others' learning experiences. When we design these spaces with cooperation in mind, we're really setting the stage for positive connections and interactions throughout the day. Okay, next slide. Okay, let's. Okay, let's take a look at sightlines. So the arrangement allows the educators to position themselves clearly so they're able to observe children's cues, verbal and nonverbal, right? So if we think of the classroom layout, it allows educators to easily observe all children throughout the learning environment. They're able to maintain that visual supervision so that children are safe. And even while educators are engaging in routines or working with small groups, they're still able to have sight of all children in the classroom. The environment is free of blind spots or equipped with mirrors or monitors that ensure full visibility of all areas. Okay. Let's look at adult furniture. So when we think of the adult furniture, it's adult-sized furniture that allows the educator to participate comfortably alongside children at their physical level. And let's just pause here for a minute to think about when educators are able to sit comfortably alongside children. Just think of those interactions and those connections that the educator and children can make throughout their time together. Okay, next we have space for child privacy. So as you can see in this visual here, children have access to a designated area for individual play, learning, maybe perhaps refocusing, or a space for them to relax. It's separated from the busier areas and the noisier parts of the classroom. If you think of a quiet space when children, and we think about it again, when we're thinking about emotional support, when we have children that just need that time in that space, they have a space where this can happen and they feel safe to do that. It's quiet, it's intentionally located away from like those busier areas and more active areas. Okay, next slide. So next we have visual displays, the child level displays that are at children's eye level. And children they can easily see and touch those displays. And most of, or all of the displays intended for children they can easily see and approach them. So think about this again, if we're making those connections to emotional support, where children are able to see their work, they're able to see themselves in these photos, how that helps support that emotional connection and that community in the classroom. Okay, next slide. Again, if you see here, this image, children displays of their work. So these displays are, again, not only at their eye level, they're in the learning setting, but they're able to see their work displayed in the classroom. Okay. Next, we have child accessible materials. So classrooms that have this child accessible materials they're available to all children. So most materials are organized and available for children to access independently. And materials are stored in ways that allow children to reach and choose them without not necessarily needing the support or help of an adult or that permission or assistance of an adult. As you can see here in the photo, all materials displayed here are accessible to children and they're able to access and use them independently. Next, we have adaptations for all children's participation. And this item reminds us that all children, regardless of the ability or need, should be able to fully participate in those classroom experiences. So adaptations might include adaptive furniture, specialized seating, perhaps some fidget tools, or maybe some switch activated toys. Each thoughtfully selected are to remove those barriers and support every child's success. The presence of these items and materials help communicate that every child belongs and that the environment is intentionally designed to meet their diverse needs. When environments are inclusive of those interactions, we know of those materials, and we know those interactions become more equitable and children have more opportunities to learn, explore, and connect. Next slide. I think that we're on the next slide, Johanna. We're on 9. Oh, okay. There we go. All right. So representation of diversity emphasizes the importance of creating that environment where all children can see themselves reflected in meaningful ways. This includes materials and displays that highlight the diverse languages, cultures, and ages, abilities, gender roles, and lived experiences. Representation goes beyond having a few multicultural books on a shelf. It involves intentionally weaving diversity throughout the entire environment, such as labels, dramatic play materials, photographs, real-world objects, and artwork. When children see authentic representation, it helps affirm their identities while also building understanding and empathy for others. So a diverse environment sends a powerful message. Every child and every family is valued. Next slide. So we have materials for all children's communication that focuses on how the environment supports expression, language, and comprehension for every child. This might include communication boards, picture cards, labels in children's home languages, puppets, play telephones, or objects tied to children's real life experiences. These tools help children communicate their needs, their ideas, their feelings, especially for those who are developing language or who are using alternative forms of communication. An environment that's rich in communication support promotes those reciprocal interactions and gives children multiple ways to express themselves. When educators intentionally include these materials, they create a classroom that lifts every child's voice. Next slide. Okay. So this is just a list of materials that you would that I just mentioned that you can also, when you were considering and thinking about those materials for all children's communication. So we've come to the end of the emotional support domain, but before we move on to classroom organization, I'd like to invite you to pause for a moment, and we're going to engage in a few minutes of reflection. So I invite you to turn to your class environment workbook and add your reflections on page 3. So we just looked at a collection of images and photos that support emotional support within the class environment. So here we have these 4 images, and looking at these items that we just explored, like space for cooperation, sightlines, adult furniture, and a space for children's privacy. What interactions do these items naturally invite? So as you're thinking about that, I invite you to think about how do they help support relationships, safety, and emotional regulation. Think about examples from classrooms you've observed, perhaps a classroom that you work in. Think about those environmental features and what about those features help children feel connected and supported. And what features may have unintentionally gotten in the way. This reflection will help us deepen our understanding of how the physical environment and emotional support truly work hand in hand. Now I will pass it to Yvette, who will lead us in the classroom organization domain.
Thank you so much, Laura. So I want to take a second just to pause, make sure we have all of our materials ready. I did see our chat going off with lots of great ideas and questions. And so right now I'm going to go ahead and allow you just a minute or so to download the workbook that Jade has been dropping in our chat. In addition to that, we want you to go ahead and access the PowerPoint that has also been dropped in our chat so you can continue to follow along as we continue with our training. So there's two different links. One is the PowerPoint and one is the workbook. And in addition, we want to and invite you to continue to engage with our Q&A feature and our chat feature. It's just making our training so much richer, and we really appreciate all the feedback that you are providing. Okay, I am going to go ahead and jump into our second domain, which is the classroom organization domain. Next slide. So we're going to shift our lens just a little bit, and we're going to jump into the classroom organization domain. So this specific domain looks at how educators structure their time, their attention, and the environment to keep children engaged and learning. In the context of class environment, this means examining how purposeful spaces, tidy systems, manageable noise levels, and supportive displays help children navigate their day smoothly. Classroom organization really is the backbone of a predictable, well-managed learning environment. One where children understand the expectations set for them, where they can easily access materials independently, and then stay engaged in meaningful play. Okay, let's jump into it. Next slide. Okay, so as we move into the next items, I want you to really think about how systems and structures influence a child's ability to focus, to participate, and to succeed. So we're going to look at the different items. Next slide. Our first item we're going to look at is purposeful space. The purposeful space guides us to consider how clearly defined and intentional each area of the classroom is. When every space has a clear purpose, whether it's arts, blocks, dramatic play, reading, or sensory exploration, children are better able to focus their time and attention. A purposeful environment communicates expectations without needing many instructions. Materials in each area should match the intended learning experience, helping children really understand what happens there and how to engage with the space. When educators create distinct, thoughtful design spaces, children can navigate the classroom independently, they can stay engaged longer, and participate in experiences that support their development and their interest. Next slide. So in this slide, what we wanted to show is some of the areas that you can define in your classroom. So we have the art area, block area, your imaginary or real world play area, reading or book area, your soft or quiet area, music area, and lastly, your sand and water area. Now, this list is not exhaustive, but of course, you can add additional areas to your classroom as you see fit. Next slide. Thank you. So we're going to look at tidiness. Tidiness is about maintaining an environment that is orderly, uncluttered, and easy for children to use. When materials are stored thoughtfully, surfaces are clear, and unused items are put away, the classroom feels predictable and manageable. A tidy environment helps children stay focused because they're not distracted by the clutter or overwhelmed by too many choices. It also supports smoother interactions because children can easily find what they need and return items when they are finished. Tidiness is not about perfection. It's about creating intentional systems that help children feel competent, organized, and above all, ready to learn. Next slide. So we're going to talk about freedom from background noise. So freedom from background noise encourages us to think about how sounds in the environment affect a children's ability to learn, listen, communicate, and stay engaged. Excessive background noise, such as loud music, can interfere with communication and oftentimes become overwhelming for children. A classroom with a calm sound environment allows children to hear educators and peers clearly and supports deeper engagement and play. This item highlights the importance of being intentional about our sound sources, and removing unnecessary noise helps us design a space where children can focus, connect, and participate without distraction. Next slide. Thank you. So visual community expectations refers to the display in the classroom that communicates expectations for behavior in a positive and child-friendly way. These visuals should be placed at children's eye level and include clear pictures or symbols so that even pre-literate children can understand them. When expectations are presented positively, such as gentle touches, helping friends, or listening ears, they support emotional regulation and create a sense of shared responsibility. These visuals act as a reminder that children can reference throughout the day, helping build independence and predictability in our community environment. Next slide. When we're looking at displays of routines and transitions, this shows children what to expect throughout their day. When routines and transitions are visually supported using photos, icons, or illustrated sequences, children can independently anticipate what comes next. This can reduce challenging behaviors or uncertainty, especially for children who benefit from visual structure. Clear routine display supports smoother transition, minimizing downtime and helping children shift from one activity to another with confidence. These visuals should be placed at children's eye level and communicated in a positive, accessible way. When routines are visible and predictable, children feel more secure and ready to participate. Next slide. And when we look at the conditions of materials, we want to focus on the quality and maintenance of the items children can use every day. Materials that are clean, complete, and in good working order communicate respect for children and support meaningful engagement. When children have access to materials that function well, they can stay focused longer and explore without frustration. This also supports safety and reduces disruptions of play. Well-maintained materials help children feel that their learning environment is cared for and that they are valued members of a classroom community. This item reminds us that the condition of materials directly impacts engagement, independence, and learning. Okay, so when we look at the quantity of materials, we look at whether there are enough materials to support consistent and meaningful engagement for all children. So when materials are plentiful and thoughtfully selected, children can explore, create, and collaborate without having to wait long periods for a turn. Adequate quantities reduce conflict, support smoother interactions, and allow children to stay fully engaged in play. This doesn't mean having endless items. It means having enough options so children can participate without frustration. A classroom with sufficient materials invites deeper play, richer conversations, and more opportunities for sustained learning. Okay. And then when we look at our sensory materials, this highlights the importance of providing children with opportunities for hands-on, tactile exploration. Materials such as paint, Play-Doh, sand, textured objects, and sensory bins allow children to explore their senses, build fine motor skills, and engage in open-ended learning. Sensory play supports curiosity, creativity, and regulation. A rich sensory environment invites children to investigate, to experiment, and to interact in ways that are developmentally meaningful. This item encourages educators to offer varied sensory experiences throughout the day, ensuring children have the freedom to explore and express themselves through touch, movement, and discovery. Next slide. So that was a lot of information. And what we want you to do is we want you to pause and reflect. On page 4 and 5 of your workbook, we have a space that looks at that looks at the different areas. So we want you to go ahead and take a couple of minutes like we did with our first domain and reflect on the items that encourages your classroom organization. So go ahead and take a couple of minutes. We want you to think about when we look at classroom organization, what class environments are currently in practice and are in helping children stay engaged, focused, and productive in your learning space. And then our call of action or call to action, we want you to choose one class environment item you are ready to improve. What is one small realistic change you can make to better support children's engagement and productivity? And with that, I will turn it back over to Laura to take us into the third domain.
Thank you, Yvette. Okay, so we are moving along. We have our last domain, which is our instructional support domain, and we will cover the items under instructional support. Next slide. So now we're going to shift into instructional support and the domain of instructional support, which we know focuses on how educators promote children's thinking, understanding, and language development. So within the class tool, we look at how the materials and displays in the classroom support these deeper learning experiences. Instructional support items help us examine whether children have access to materials that spark curiosity, encourage problem solving, and extend conversations and promote rich exploration. Next slide. So here's a list of our items under the instructional support domain of class environment. So as we explore these items, consider how the environment can act as a partner in instruction, providing tools that invite inquiry, inspire children to think, question, create, and express their ideas. Next slide. So our first item we have is displays of children's writing and dictation. Though these items highlight the importance of honoring children's early attempts at writing, storytelling, and expression. These displays might include children's pre-writing marks, drawings with dictation, or emerging letter formations in any language. When we showcase children's authentic writing, we communicate that their thoughts and ideas matter. This builds confidence and encourages children to continue experimenting with literacy. These displays should be current, they should be accessible to children, and reflective of the unique ways that they communicate. This item reminds us that even the earliest forms of writing deserve recognition and celebration. Next slide. So our next item is effectiveness of screen time. Effectiveness of screen time asks us to consider how digital tools are used within the learning environment. Screen time should be interactive, intentional, and connected to meaningful learning experiences. When educators guide children's use of technology, inviting them to tap, drag, explore, or interact with the content, it becomes a tool for engagement rather than passive entertainment. The focus is on quality, not quantity. Screen-based technology should enhance learning, encourage problem solving, and support communication. This item reminds us that technology has a place in early learning when used thoughtfully and purposefully. Okay, next slide. So we're going to pause here. We're not going to join a breakout room just due to our large number of participants, but we will have an opportunity to review the following class environment materials. So rather, what you're going to do, you're going to work independently and follow along in your workbook for items 21 through 29. And these items can be found starting on page 9 of your workbook. If you turn to page 9, you will see that you'll have spaces to record those materials that you already have, and a space for materials that you want to add. So we can use this time as we go through the materials list and looking at the different items. You can make a list of what are some items that you still need and you want to add to enhance your learning space. Feel free to add your notes and ideas in those spaces provided. Okay. So we'll go ahead and dive right into the next few slides, which are our materials. Next slide, John. So our first item that we have under the materials list is open-ended materials. So open-ended materials encourage children to explore, create, and imagine without a single right way to use them. Just like it sounds, right? They're open-ended. These materials, such as blank paper, collage, supplies, loose parts, recycled items, and natural objects, invite children to think flexibly and experiment with different possibilities. So take a moment to note what are those materials that you already have in your learning environment. As we know, open-ended materials, they promote creativity, problem solving, higher order thinking, because children decide how to use them, what to build, and how to express their ideas. This item reminds us that when children are given materials without predetermined outcomes, they gain ownership of their learning and are more deeply engaged in the creative process. So take a moment to reflect on your space. What materials do you already have? And what materials do you still need to add to your learning environment for open-ended materials? Okay, next slide. Now we have item 22, which are materials for imaginary real-world play support. Okay, we know that these materials help support children in acting out familiar roles, routines, and real-life experiences. Through dramatic play props like cookware, empty food boxes, uniforms, tools, and specialty items such as cash registers or flower shop materials, children can recreate scenes from their home, their community, or from their own imagination. So this type of play supports social development, language use, problem solving, and cooperation. It also offers opportunities for educators to join in, extend those conversations, and deepen learning for children. These materials help children process their world and make sense of the experiences that shape their everyday lives. So I want to invite you to take a moment to make note of those materials that you already have in your space that is supporting this imaginary real world play for children, and those materials that you would like to add to enhance your space. Okay, next slide. Item 23, art, music, and dance materials. So these materials give children essential opportunities to express themselves creatively. Materials like crayons, paints, easels, markers, drums, bells, scarves, and musical instruments allow children to explore sound, movement, color, and form. These experiences build fine and gross motor skills. They promote emotional expression and support cognitive development. When these materials are easily accessible for children, children can choose how and when to engage in that creative expression. This item encourages educators to ensure that creative arts are woven naturally into the daily environment so that children can explore freely and joyfully. So once again, let's take a moment to think about the materials, art, music, and dance materials that you already have in your learning space and materials that you would like to add. Okay, next slide. Item 24, real-world multicultural materials. So these materials focus on bringing the authentic cultural objects into the classroom to represent the diversity of children's families and communities. These materials might include traditional clothing, woven textiles, baskets, kitchen tools, instruments, dolls, or ceremonial objects that carry meaning in various cultures. The purpose is not decoration, it's representation. So when children see real objects from a range of cultures, they gain deeper understanding, appreciation, and respect for their own and others' identities. This supports inclusive learning experiences and fosters a sense of belonging for every child. Let's take a moment to think about those materials that you currently have in your learning space and materials that you would like to add to enhance your learning space. Yeah, you can also feel free to add your ideas to the chat so that we could collectively support each other in thinking of those materials, perhaps that we can add. If you have, I see somebody already dropped in the chat. You have more ideas, feel free to add them to the chat. Okay. Next slide. Thank you. Next, we have recycled materials. So this brings familiar everyday objects into the classroom for children to repurpose in creative ways. Items such as cardboard boxes, jars, fabric scraps, paper towels, rolls, magazines, or yarn can offer endless possibilities for building, crafting, sorting, and exploring. These materials encourage imagination, problem solving, and sustainability. Children often connect strongly to materials they see and use at home, making these items meaningful and accessible. And these items highlight the value of offering materials that children can transform, combine, and reimagine, supporting both environmental awareness and open-ended learning. So let's take a moment to pause here. Think about your recycled materials that you already have in your environment that's supporting those interactions, those materials that you'd like to add to your environment to support those interactions. And you can feel free to add to the chat so that we can glean from your ideas and what you currently have in your classroom. We'll take a moment for that. Seeing so many wonderful ideas in the chat. Thank you for your contributions. Okay, let's move on to items, and you can continue to add to the chat. But we'll continue with our next item, which is materials from nature. So, materials from nature provide children with opportunities to explore the natural world through hands-on investigation. We have items like rocks, leaves, sticks, seeds, pine cones, shells, and flowers. All of those invite curiosity and wonder. Natural materials support sensory exploration, scientific thinking, and creativity. And they also help connect children to the outdoors, even when they are inside the classroom. This item encourages educators to incorporate nature-based materials throughout the environment in ways that promote inquiry, observation, and appreciation for the world around them. If you go to our next slide, you'll have a list here of materials um, that supports the materials from nature. We have animals, for example, fish, crickets, and turtles. We have flower buds, flowers, fossils, leaves, pine cones, plants, rocks, seeds, sticks, and shells. So feel free to add materials that you are currently already have in your space, materials that you want to add, and absolutely share in the chat some of those amazing ideas that you're already adding. And I always say this is a great activity for you to engage children when you want to collect these items. They love collecting nature items. So you could go on a wonderful nature walk and collect all of these, and then you can add them to your indoor classroom, your space. Thank you again for your wonderful ideas that you're adding to the chat. Especially when we're coming up with a list of items that we still want to add, we could definitely um, lean on the chat and see what are some ideas that we have not thought of that we can add to our list. So thank you for those. Okay, you can continue to add to the chat, and we're going to move on to our next item. Oh, we continue to thank you. All right, so now we have literacy materials. Those focus on how the environment supports early reading, writing, and language development. When we think of classrooms that include a variety of books, alphabet materials, labels with pictures, writing tools, and opportunities for children to interact with print, literacy becomes a natural part of the learning experience. These materials should be accessible, inviting, and integrated throughout the environment, not limited to a single shelf or area. When children can explore books independently, see labeled materials, make lists in the dramatic play, or experiment with writing tools, they begin to understand the power of language and communication. And these items encourage educators to create a print-rich environment that reflects children's interest and supports them as emerging readers and writers. Okay, next slide. Okay, here is a list of materials that you can include for this particular item. We have alphabet materials, including cards, charts, games, letters, puzzles, and stencils, alphabet books, flannel boards. We have sequencing cards to retell a story, labels, having those labels around your classroom to label children's cubbies, label the different centers in your environment, menus in the dramatic play area, writing materials. You want to have pads of paper for grocery lists, for restaurant orders, cards and envelopes to write letters. So again, I want to invite you to think about those materials you already have. You can add those to the chat so we can share with our colleagues. And then think about those materials that you'd like to add to enhance your environment to support those quality interactions for this item. We want our children to fall in love with everything literacy and pre-literacy, reading, writing, right? So those materials that help support that in your classroom. Okay, let's move on to our next item, which is item 28, math materials. As we know, math materials help our children develop those foundational math skills through hands-on exploration. Items such as balance scales, shape puzzles, number lines, blocks, calendars, dice, and patterning materials allow our children to explore counting, comparison, measurement, shapes, and spatial relationships. When these materials are accessible and thoughtfully organized, our children can engage in meaningful math experiences through the day, whether building a tower, sorting objects, or exploring number games. Math materials should spark curiosity and help children make a sense of concepts through play. These items remind us that early math learning is best supported through those materials that are engaging, interactive, that invite children to explore, to question, and to discover. So some materials that are included, we have balance scales and a variety of materials to weigh, books about numbers and counting, shapes, blocks of different sizes and shapes. We have clocks, calendars, stopwatches, different size containers for comparing quantities, shape bingo, dominoes, dice, and materials for patterning. We have a lengthy list for our math materials, so let's go to our next slide. We have more there. Magnetic numbers, number puzzles, number lines, number tiles, number blocks, picture cards that show different positions, play money, rulers, and shape puzzles. So I invite you to, again, to think about those materials you already have in your space that are supporting those quality interactions within instructional support, those that you'd like to add, and I see that you all are already adding materials to our chat, so thank you. You all are doing amazing. Thank you so much for adding your ideas to the chat. Okay, next slide. We'll move on to item 29, social and emotional learning materials. These materials help support children in understanding their feelings and building relationships and developing self-regulation skills. So books about emotions, puppets for role play, calming tools, visual schedules, and problem-solving posters all help children navigate their emotional world. These materials give children language and strategies for expressing themselves and resolving conflicts. When social emotional learning materials are accessible and integrated into play and routines, children learn that emotions are something they can understand and manage, not something that they have to struggle with alone. This item encourages educators to use materials intentionally to support positive social interactions and emotional growth. So some materials included would be books that show children experiencing different emotions, books that show ways to deal with strong emotions, books about friendships, caring and empathy, about conflict resolution. Okay, next slide. Here's an additional list of materials that would help support that social and emotional learning. We have fidget toys, posters that show different ways to calm down, post-it schedule to help children know what is next, posters that display problem solving, puppets for role play or acting out feelings, and stress balls. So take a moment here to reflect in your learning space, what you currently have, what you'd like to add to your learning space to support social and emotional learning. Okay, well, we have come to the end of our items. We have covered all 29 items today. So now I am going to pass it over to Yvette to close us out with a reflection. Thank you so much for all of your ideas and contributions that you've added to the chat.
Thank you so much, Laura. I was watching the chat just go on and on with all these wonderful ideas about the different materials you can add and just enhance your learning space for the children in your classroom. And I love it. We're going to take a moment, we're going to kiss our brain and just really continue to engage and add these pieces so we can all just share, right? That's our goal. So before I close it off, I want to clarify a few things. The training that you are currently in is for your increase of knowledge on the class tool. This training is not the training that you are required to complete to become a certified observer. This training is something we heard from a lot of you saying we need more information on the class environment. So the CDE and our partners at El Dorado County Office of Ed thought that it would be a great place for us to share more information about the class environment. But this is not the training to become a certified observer. That you would need to continue on with Teachstone and reach out to your Aspire lead if you want any more information. So we will actually drop in the chat our Aspire website. Okay. In addition to that, we have received a lot of really great questions about certificates and how we will know you attended the training. So we will download the list of all of our attendees and we will send out certificates. But with that, we will also send out some answers to questions we've received and the workbook, as well as the PDF of the slide deck to make sure that everybody has that available. Just making sure you all have all those tools in your tool belt. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and close it off. So as we complete our training, we want you to turn to page 6 of your workbook or on a piece of paper, and we want you to think about our 3-2-1 reflection. So with 3, what are 3 things you learned today about how the environment supports interactions? And just like we did in the past couple of slides, feel free to add it in the chat. With 2, what 2 aspects of your current learning environment you want to rethink or adjust? And lastly, with 1, what is one immediate change you will commit to making in your learning space? So feel free to answer those in the chat. We know that your insights and reflections today are a powerful first step as you complete your 3-2-1 reflection. We know that even a small shift can open up new possibilities for children's engagement, independence, and learning in the space. Thank you for all the wonderful ideas in the chat. And next slide. So as we bring this training to a close, it's important to remember that a well-designed environment supports meaningful interactions. It promotes independence and creates rich opportunities for learning across class domains. By intentionally arranging your spaces, selecting materials, and choosing displays that reflect children's identities and needs, educators such as yourself create environments where children learn and thrive. The environment truly becomes a partner in instruction. It guides children towards curiosity, towards connection, and engagement. And above all, it provides us with the space to have more meaningful and intentional interactions with the children in our classroom. We hope you've enjoyed this training. We will send an email out once it's available and the recording is available. And we look forward to seeing all of you for our part 2, which will be February 19th at the same time, 3 p.m. Thank you once again for joining us. We hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.